How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your February 2019 horoscope for Aries, Sun, and Rising. How is it going, Aries? This month, well, actually, before we go into that, I just want to thank you guys for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love every single one of you, and I really hope that this stuff helps you guys. So before we go into the horoscope, I just want to say this month kind of looks a little bit weird for you guys. It's not going to be so aggressive or frustrating as January was. However, it is going to be a little bit more confusing. It is going to be a little bit more like you can't be your natural Aries self this month. You're going to feel very much like, even though you've been wanting to go and be ambitious, you're going to have to slow things down this month and really look at what's going to be the most valuable thing to really focus on. So let's go ahead and get into the horoscope with the first kind of couple days of the month. We have kind of like back-to-back stuff. February 1st, we have Mars squaring Pluto. So as Pluto's in your 10th house, that area of your career and change, or that area of your career and public image and things like that have been under a lot of change since 2008. And I don't want to necessarily hit on so much of Pluto being in Capricorn, but Mars has been in Aries where you felt a little bit frustrated. You felt a little bit, angry with yourself. You could have been dealing with that. However, you've also felt very ambitious, very like, okay, I need to go. I need to do things. I need to put energy out there. And as Mars squares Pluto, this is going to be a little bit more tension of like more of long-term stuff of like what's happened in the past and the fear that comes around that of, basically what that past has brought. And that Mars in Aries is kind of like fighting that nature, kind of like it can't be timid or afraid of what can go wrong that has gone wrong in the past, and I have to be able to face and confront that fear by charging myself up and keeping it going. So that is basically what that Mars square Pluto looks like. But as we continue on onto February 2nd, on the next day, we have Venus trining Uranus, where Venus is now in your your ninth house, my bad. She's been in your ninth house. You've been really valuing, like, what are you believing? Like, Venus being in the ninth house is like, things like foreign people or foreign countries and religions and foreign languages. That's what I was trying to think of. I don't know why I couldn't say that. Also like far distance travel and religion and spirituality. So Venus being up there could kind of making you very spiritual right now, kind of like, hey, what do I believe? What do I want to see? What do I want to go? Where do I want to think? Where do I want to learn? And as Venus starts to trine Uranus, where Uranus is in your first house, you're feeling good. You have that Uranus energy going to you where it's kind of like breakthrough moment at any time, breakthroughs, breakdowns. That's the whole Uranus nature. But as Venus trines it, this is kind of like, as you explore and really value what you can learn and what you can believe, that's going to really trigger like a whole sense of new you. Like Uranus is at the last few degrees of your guys' first house, or, maybe he's leaving the sign of your sun. Long story short, Uranus is trying to give you one last couple breakthroughs as much as he can. And as Venus trines it right there, this is kind of like, hey, like, what have you been believing? What have you been exploring in your beliefs and that sense of value? And let that be worn on you. Let that excite you. Let that break your personality through to the next level of what you've been trying to achieve. Positive stuff. But as we move forward into the next day, February 3rd, we have Venus going into Capricorn, where she is going to be in your 10th house. She is going to be your area of your career, your public image, your work life. And Venus isn't going to be as fun as she was in Sagittarius, but whatever. She's going into Capricorn where she can be a little bit more serious and she can really put a lot more value in what things are supposed to look like. So Saturn's going through your 10th house right now, and we have the South Node, and we have Pluto. There's a lot of construction going on in that area. It's kind of like, what are you focusing on with your career? Where do you need to establish yourself in your career and your public image? What is crumbling? What's not working anymore? What needs to change? Where do you need to concentrate things? What needs to be brought into place to, build efficiency and effectivity? And as Venus goes through Capricorn, this is really putting a lot more value to that. Like Venus and Capricorn, Venus and Sagittarius can get excited about what she can think of and what she can believe. But as Venus goes into Capricorn, unless it's real, unless it means something, unless it like you really want to dedicate yourself to this, like don't worry about it. Venus in Capricorn really likes the rules. Venus in Capricorn likes material things. Venus in Capricorn wants things to be an efficient, effective way, and she values those rules. She values discipline. She values long-term results. And as Venus goes through this area, this is about taking that part of your career that's under change and like really placing the value in like, I really like how I'm going to handle this. If there's going to be walls crumbling down, where do I really need to place my value in, I guess, getting things back? I guess in the sense of if things are kind of bad in that area, Venus and Capricorn's going, okay, what can I utilize out of this, and what do I need to scrape up that's still of value? If things are going good in this area where you are doing a lot of change, Venus and Capricorn's like, dude, like, I'm valuing this, I'm loving this efficiency, I'm loving this effectivity, I want to follow the rules, I want to be disciplined, and I'm liking having this structural organization to yourself, and that's happening in your career area. Then, we're gonna talk about that more as the month goes on. However, as Venus goes into a Capricorn the next day on February 4th, we have the new moon in Aquarius. So, you know, Mars had that retrograde in Aquarius. You could have difficulties with your friendships and stuff like that. And as we have this new moon in Aquarius, this is definitely going to be like cleaning up that area of your networks and your connections and your affiliates and who you involve yourself with. This is kind of like looking at, you know, different opportunities, different networks that you can connect yourself to, maybe detaching away from ones that just don't work anymore, that don't support your vision anymore, that don't support what you want things to look like, and finding yourself connected into better groups of people that are going to support you for that stuff. So the new moon in Aquarius, awesome. Then on February 10th, this is when things start to get a little bit weird for you guys. Because, you know, I said that earlier in the video. This is when Mercury goes into Pisces. Mercury's going to later retrograde in Pisces. It's going to conjunct Neptune. It's going to square Jupiter. And this is all in your 12th house, where Mercury's going to be for the next little while. And the 12th house is of repressed parts of yourself, unacknowledged parts of yourself. Has a lot to do with fears. Has a lot to do with hidden things, hidden enemies. You can't really see what's going on in the 12th house. You don't always acknowledge it. You're not always aware of it. So as Mercury goes into Pisces, it's also going into its sign of detriment. It doesn't really work too well. Mercury wants either a direct message written on paper or said to them. Mercury in Pisces is kind of like Mercury's getting a message where the person communicating the message is like, in your sleep tonight, you will know what you need to say. You will know what the message is. Mercury in Pisces is like, what the fuck? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So Mercury in Pisces going through your 12th house is kind of like, there's this, you're going to be uncovering a lot more of yourself. Mercury in Pisces is kind of like, oh, I just learned this. Oh, I just understand this. Oh, this is becoming a little bit more unrepressed and a little bit more acknowledged and brought a little bit more into the light. And we're going to keep talking about this because Mercury's got some more stuff to do. But as Mercury goes through Pisces, expect things to be like, as far as communication goes, as far as like even things like your subconscious and things that you repress, expect that stuff to come up. Moving forward, though, on February 13th, we do have Mars conjoining Uranus. And this is like the last moment of Uranus in Aries, you know, being like, you can break through or break down, you can liberate yourself, be excited, be free. You know, who are you? What is your identity? And how do you put that out there? How do you live that life? Mars is going to be on top of Uranus, where this can be like that breakthrough moment or that breakdown moment. That's what Uranus is notorious for. And even though Mars in Aries, it's in your, you know, it's in its home sign, it's in your first house, you're feeling charged up, you're feeling ambitious, there's also an equal opportunity for things to fall through, and there's things that, you know, there's those problems and those issues and those irritations that Mars can cause. And as it's on top of Uranus, those might win. However, as Mars is in Aries, where you're still feeling ambitious, you're still trying to go and drive, that conjunction to Uranus could mean, you know, like breakthrough opportunity to like, all right, you're feeling yourself, you're in your groove, where what was holding you back as far as yourself was, like you finally got angry enough to let go of that and shoot on to the next thing. So then after that, though, on February 14th, on Valentine's Day, we have Mars going into Taurus, where this is where things get a little bit weird still. Mars is now out of its home sign. It's in its detriment of Taurus, where it's hard to move a bull. It's hard to get a huge animal to do anything other than what it wants to. So Mars in Taurus can be a little bit lazy. It can lack ambition. It can lack want or need to even get up or do anything. Now, the biggest thing, though, is that this is going to be going into your second house of money, of resources, of finances, of what you own and what you possess. And as Mars goes in there, it's going to be really easy for you, because, again, Mars's problems, it's going to be really easy for you to indulge, really easy for you to spend money on high-ticket items, things that you want. I'm going to tell you right now, for the first part of the month, don't do that. Like, later on, you'll see where you can invest some stuff in. But it's going to be easy for you to overspend on a lot of things, so try not to get too crazy with your money and only spend where it's needed, where you can invest that. Mars is going to be still squaring Saturn and Pluto as it goes into Mars, however, as it goes into Taurus. However, later on it will be trining Venus, or it's not trining Venus exactly anymore, but it will be trining Saturn, it will be trining Pluto. There's going to be times where you can invest and make profit. However, as Mars is in Taurus, just be careful where you're spending your money. Don't overindulge. Taurus really likes luxury items, so don't buy those things at this moment. However, a couple days later on February 16th, we have Venus sextiling Neptune. So where Venus is, you know, again, she's really valuing, you know, what's being constructed in the career zone, that change, that sense of like, hey, I'm finally letting things go. I'm finally moving on to something else. Where can I really wrap things up? Where can I tidy things up? How can I really look at the rules and do things the right way? Venus is going to sextile Neptune, where Neptune's been in your 12th house of repressed parts, unacknowledged parts of yourself. And this is kind of like opening up the door to like, hey, I didn't understand that I knew how to groove this well with it. I didn't understand that I could value this type of work and this type of efficiency and this type of energy in this area. So this is going to be a little bit supportive, and you may find out something about yourself that you didn't know and that you actually really like. So as we move forward, as we go into February 17th, the next day, Venus is going to conjoin Saturn. It's going to conjunct Saturn and Capricorn in your 10th house. So this is really like, you know, Saturn and Capricorn could be bringing the limitations, bringing the walls, bringing the you know, what needs to change and what needs to be disciplined and focused on in that career area. And Saturn's also like, if you discipline yourself, if you work hard, if you make things easier for yourself, if you really eliminate what doesn't need to be addressed and really focus on the core issues, you're going to be successful. Venus going on top of Saturn right there is kind of like, I don't want to say it's Venus, you know, being held down by Saturn. It's more of like Venus is on Saturn's side. Venus is like, you like to work. You like to focus on these things that are happening in your career. You want to make these changes. You want things to be constructed in a certain way in this area. And as Venus goes on top of Saturn, this is kind of like, hey, you know, this could be more of a, I don't want to say it's like an emotionally passionate time. It's Venus and Saturn and Capricorn. It's just serious. It's just real. And this is just the time to really value what you're doing in your career. What are you really building up to? Where are you disciplining yourself? But also realizing if something's holding you back, what do you need to concentrate on? It's kind of like, you know, if there's all of these walls, I don't want to say, well, you could still see the sun up. It's more of like, what's the weakest part of this wall that you can really tear down? What is the best part of this wall that you can keep together? Where can you concentrate that energy and bring the value on concentration? Where it's kind of like living the minimalist lifestyle. You know, it's nicer to have less things. It's nicer to only have the things that are important to me. So, moving on though, the next day on February 18th, we have a pretty big day. We have Mercury conjoining Neptune and entering shadow. So this is where, this is in your 12th house again, where Mercury's in Pisces, it's going to hit Neptune, enter shadow because he's going to retrograde later. As Mercury hits this area, this is going to be that confusing time of like, what are you repressing? What are you not acknowledging? What isn't making sense at this now? And what it's going to be kind of like, you're like, things aren't making sense and I need them to. Like you're in Aries, you need things to be clear. So as Mercury hits Neptune and things kind of become a very open space, like an open book, where it's kind of like there's no point, like where do things go? This is a weird message. And it enters shadow. Just know that we're going to be coming back to this again. But on the 18th, Chiron is going to leave Pisces and enter Aries, where Chiron in Pisces brings a lot of like unhealed wounds in the area of your subconscious, in the area of like, you know, repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself. But as Chiron goes into Aries, where it's more of like, you know, physical therapy time, it's time to like, you know, take the next steps to growing and the next steps to healing. As that goes into your first house, this is going to be kind of like, okay, I'm not feeling so scared of these repressed parts of myself. They're not hurting so much, but they need to be clear. And as Chiron goes into Aries, this is more addressing yourself in the sense of like, you're growing, you're healing. Uranus could have really brought a lot of ups and downs. And at this time, it's really like, hey, if this is what I look like, if this is what I want to support myself doing, these are the steps I need to take. It's kind of like you could have woke up paralyzed and you're like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. Like I'm going to walk again. That's the Chiron in Aries. Like it's time to start walking again and you'll eventually do it. It just takes commitment and practice. Also on the 18th, the sun's going to go into Pisces. So it's going to be entering your 12th house where the themes of, you know, repressed parts of yourself, unacknowledged parts of yourself, the subconscious, dreams, what's hidden, what you don't always see. It's kind of blinding us. The sun's going to go in this area where this is going to light this area up. You know, you may be blinded by things that you don't see. You may be blinded by things that are confusing and it's going to be easy for you to avoid them or easy for you to not look at them. However, my biggest suggestion is definitely take your time to reflect on what's kind of coming up for you. If you have crazy dreams or have crazy nightmares or things are just being popped up left and right about yourself, sit on them for a second. You don't need to clear them up right now, but just feel them out. So, lots going on the 18th. We move on to the 19th. We're almost done with February. We have the full moon in Virgo and we have Mercury sextiling Saturn. So as we have this full moon in Virgo, where the sun's now in Pisces, the full moon's in Virgo, Virgo is going to be ruling your 6th house, which is about routine, your everyday habits, your sense of service and employment in this world, your health and things like that. So as the sun goes into Pisces and it's lighting up this area of what you repress, what you don't acknowledge, the moon in Virgo is going, what do you need to do about it? What do you need to address? It's kind of like, oh, I'm just now realizing things are confusing, but now I'm starting to see how can I address things? How can I organize things into a way that's going to be more healthy, that's going to be more effective? It's the full moon in Virgo. It's like realizing what needs to be addressed and realizing the specifics, realizing what matters most, realizing, you know, it's kind of like taking count of all of the numbers, like reading all the numbers, doing all the math, crunching the numbers, whatever you want to call it. That's like the full moon in Virgo. And this is happening in your 6th house of like, okay, where do I need to address my health? Where do I need to address my routines, my sense of service, my employment? So this is going to be like, yeah, you're going to be learning a lot about yourself. Full moon in Virgo is like, it's time to go. It's time to realize what needs to be done. Mercury's also going to sextile Neptune at that time. Not Neptune, Saturn. So as Mercury's in Pisces, where again, things are a little bit unclear, things are a little bit foggy, as it sextiles Saturn in your career area, it's like, okay, like now I'm starting to get in the drive of this. Now things are starting to get repressed and now things are starting to get, you know, brought up and acknowledged, and now I can see them for what they are. And Saturn's going to help you make that decision of like what's going to be in the best interest for you moving forward, and how can you really tighten all of these things up, kind of like Saturn in the South Node, like what do you need to address and tidy up and get, you know, into a box so you can keep moving forward. So this is going to be more of a supportive thing. Now, as we move forward a couple days later, we're getting to the last couple of things that are happening in February. Venus is going to conjoin Pluto, and on the 22nd, Venus is going to join Pluto on the 22nd, and Mercury is going to square Jupiter on the 22nd. So as Venus conjoins Pluto, Pluto's in your 10th house. This is bringing up a lot of fears and things that have happened in the past, that have crumbled in the past in your career area. And Venus is going, what value can I get in that? Like, Venus looks at Pluto and says, fuck that, you know, death stuff. Fuck all of that, you know, intense, raw, scary things. And Venus is going, what can I value out of this transition? What can I value out of this, you know, problem or this dilemma or the things that have been brought up? And Venus is just going to basically find, you know, the good and the bad, the best and the disasters. It's kind of like, you know, the Black Plague was horrible, but we learned to wash our hands afterwards. And now we don't have to worry about that, basically. We learned basic hygiene. That's like Venus on top of Pluto. Like, okay, like that was awful, but we learned something out of it that actually brings a lot of value. So that's going to be a really big deal as we go into the 22nd. And as Mercury squares Jupiter, Jupiter's in your 9th house for like a whole year, guys. Like, there's a lot of expansion on what you believe, on your religions, on your, this is also talking about far distance travel, foreign languages, different cultures and things not of this, like not even out of this nature, but just not in your immediate territory. And so as Jupiter's in here expanding this area, wanting you to believe in more, wanting you to seek what you believe, Mercury's going to square Jupiter for the first time. It'll square Jupiter a couple more times. But as it squares it the first time, this is kind of like, if this is what I want to believe, if this is where I'm exploring, Mercury in Pisces is finding the issue of like, I don't understand how to believe that. This is confusing. Jupiter in in Sagittarius is like, what do you believe? You can grow into more. There's more opportunity there. Mercury in Pisces is like, that doesn't make sense. I'm not seeing that. So we're going to be coming back and forth to that, where you will eventually get to the point where you're like, oh, I do see the opportunity. I do see what I need to not repress and actually acknowledge and bring up and start to change your beliefs with. But just not at this moment. That's when you're going to start to see the more of like a, oh, this is, I want to believe this stuff, but clearly I don't. Like, you know, you could say that you believe that you're the best all day long, but until you have the life of like you are the best, you probably don't believe it. And I know that's a very far-fetched analogy, but you understand what I'm saying. Then on the 25th, we have Venus conjoining the South Node. This is a big deal because the South Node is kind of like, dude, like, you know, I made this analogy in the Cancer video. The South Node is what we got to let go of. It's like, what's worked in the past? What do we need to address in the past in order to move forward? What do we need to let go of? What needs to change in this area? And as Venus goes over Saturn, over the South Node, this is where Venus is kind of like it's hard for Venus to, the best way to put it is, this is what I talked about in my Cancer video, was it's kind of like having to let go of employees when you don't have a choice when it comes to budget. You see the value in them. You had a lot of great memories. They were great workers, but in order to survive as a company, you'll have to let go of some employees. And it's just hard. It sucks that making those changes. It's hard having to concentrate that energy, but it's about what's going to be the most effective and efficient. And as Venus says goodbye to the South Node, it's kind of like, you know, it's not necessarily something that you want to do. It's something that you have to do. It's something that you are being forced to change. And Venus is kind of like, you know, you're going to see the value in that. You're going to see the value in looking back in the past, and it's going to bring up that stuff. But Venus is on the South Node where it's like, doesn't work anymore. We got to do something else. This isn't efficient or effective anymore. Then, sorry to hit you with that depressing note, but that's just kind of moving on from the career stuff. This is your 10th house. Like, dude, like, you know, this doesn't work anymore. We got to concentrate this energy. We need to focus more on what's working. And that's what Venus is going to be doing to you guys. But then we get into the last big transits of February on the 27th. Mercury's going to sextile Venus. Sun's going to sextile Mars. So as the Sun's in Pisces and it sextiles Mars, this is kind of supportive of like, okay, this is helping you take things slower. This is helping you take things one step at a time and not rushing in, you know, don't rush into the mud. Like you're going to, if you are trying to keep yourself clean, don't rush into the mud. Take one step at a time and you'll be fine. Your shoes will get dirty, but you won't get dirty. Now, Mercury's also going to sextile Venus, where Mercury is in Pisces. Things aren't clear. Things are still confusing. But as Venus sextiles Mercury, or I should say as Mercury sextiles Venus, this is really looking at things and going, okay, this may not make sense, but I understand why I'm doing this. I understand the value in this. It's kind of like the wax on, wax off. But instead of being like, I don't get why we're doing this, this is more of like, okay, I don't see how this makes sense, but I can kind of see a way to kind of incorporate it into my life. I can kind of see how this is helpful. But that's how we're kind of ending off February. It's kind of a weird note, but I do think that this month is just going to be a time for you guys. Take it a little bit slow, really reflect, don't rush into things, and it's about uncovering. There's a lot of this whole month is really about uncovering and really looking at where to concentrate your energy in your career. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you guys for next month's horoscopes.